It is 5:01. We will call the Round Rock Independent School District Board of Trustees regular board meeting to order. Today is Thursday, May 28th. We will give Jennifer just a second to put up the flags for us, and we will do the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Right. Thank you. We do have one public speaker. Ms. Becky McCauley is going to speak on G1 and G2. Do we have verification that she got the code? I know last time we had a little bit of an issue with that email.
Yes, she was emailed the link when I was copied on that email that came from Patty.
Doug, is there a certain amount of time we need to wait?
No, this is the time the meeting's been called. You gave adequate notice of the meeting and when it would come in the agenda. So you're not required by law to wait or give her additional time if you don't want to.
Can we do our closed session, and if she chimes in, let her do it when we come back?
I don't have a problem with that. Does anyone else have a problem with if we go ahead and we'll just skip to E, closed session, and then if she does, I guess Jenny just ask her to wait if she still wants to speak.
Or couldn't she also submit something in writing that could be read?
Mm-hmm.
I would lean more towards getting something in writing. I think if we set the precedent that we're going to just come back and do it after the fact, even when we get back to normal, I don't know how I am about this. I'd rather just follow the rules, but I'm fine even giving her another couple of minutes to see if she's chimed in, but it's more of a,
okay. Well, yeah, and I agree. We don't want to do anything different. We do put it in a different place though in our agenda now. Lots of times in our regular meetings, we would have gone to close first and then come back.
We did, Amy, this is Jenny. We did ask her to join the meeting by 5 p.m. and no earlier than 4:45. I'm happy to email again and invite her to provide her comments via email if the board would like me to do that.
Okay, yeah, let's do that. I would appreciate that, and that way we can go ahead and go to closed session because it's 5:04 right now.
I'll do that.
Thank you. All right, so it is 5:04. Pursuant to Texas Government Code 551.071, the board will meet in consultation with legal counsel on McNeil High School construction project and Cadence McShane Construction Company. Pursuant to Texas Government Code 551.072, the board will meet to discuss and deliberate on the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property, and pursuant to Texas Government Code 551.071, the board may seek legal advice regarding the proposed conveyance sale of land. And pursuant to Texas Government Code 551.071 and 551.074, the board will consult with attorneys to discuss the duties, roles, and responsibilities of a public officer and employees. And with that, it is 5:05, and we will go into closed. All right, so it is 8:17, and we are out of closed session. Dr. Flores, did you have a quick, or Mr. Worcester?
No, I'll turn this presentation. Well, we have a motion first coming out of closed session.
Dr. Flores, we're not streaming yet, though.
It'll be afterwards. It'll be afterwards.
It just
Okay, yeah, send it to me, Amy. Send it to me and I'll send it to him.
First the presentation and then the motion.
Okay.
Yeah.
We are back streaming, board members.
All right. It is now 8:18 and we are out of closed. And we had a quick presentation regarding closed. Dr. Flores.
Yes, what we're going to do is have Mr. Terry Wooster, our Chief Operations Officer, give an overview of 620 project, a quick overview and its impact, not only around our high school, but to the administration building and how we'll be circulating in the fall as we get closer to the fall. So without further ado, Mr. Terry Wooster.
Thank you, Dr. Flores and President Weir, trustees, Dr. Flores. I'll be very brief, less than 5 minutes. And if you see me go over 5 minutes, raise your hand. And from that point, I'm going to share a screen. And so as I do that, let's see, I'm going to have to ask the host to allow me to participate in screen sharing. And so yes, and so I'm looking to be able to get into my screen. There we go. Thank you. And the screen that I'm about to share is a graphic of 620 improvements. And this graphic was created by the civil engineer that is TxDOT and the city of Round Rock in their design of the improvements. And I'm going to go through this quickly. And so if you can follow my browser, hopefully you can see my browser, is that over here on the far east, on the right side, is Interstate 35. And you'll notice that there is a color coding on this graphic. Important to know for orientation, north is up. And so north is up and to follow that graphic. So we're on the east side, on the right side. And as we exit I-35, then as we begin to move westbound on 620, you'll see that we come across a circular element, and that is a roundabout that is designed to be at the lower level of an overpass at the train tracks. The train tracks on 620 is this darker gray line that runs diagonally. And so the design of 620 is such that the Chisholm Trail will come and be right-hand turn to an access road, as well as there will be a lower roundabout that will be able to circulate traffic across the train tracks. And so as you go westbound, you'll notice the color coding of the blue. The blue on this graphic represents an overpass, an elevated overpass. And so there is an overpass above the roundabout. This overpass, as well as all along 620, as you follow this all the way up to Deepwood, is designed to accommodate 2 express lanes. Those express lanes are elevated onto the top of the overpass. We know that this is a high volume road. We know that now approximately 75,000 cars per day travels 620. And so it's a high speed, high volume roadway. The yellow on this graphic, such as you see here, and particularly here, are ramps and or let's say abutments to the overpasses themselves. They obviously, as you're westbound from the overpass, you're descending to the point that you get to about here. This is a critical point for Round Rock ISD, simply because just approximately right at there's a restaurant on the north side here, and directly adjacent to the residential along 620 here, between the shopping center and the train track, is an off-ramp off the express lanes. And as you take this off-ramp, it goes down to a service road or an access road along the north side to Lake Creek. Meanwhile, the express lanes are elevating. They're ramping up to an overpass at Lake Creek. And so when you look at the intersection that we may all know of and are very familiar with at Lake Creek, currently all traffic, express traffic, will be above Lake Creek. And from the surface of Lake Creek paving to the surface of the express lane. That will be approximately 22 feet plus another maybe 4 feet for guardrail. And so in this particular location, in this elevated location, there will be a very strong view westbound into the Round Rock property. You'll be able to look down into the Round Rock property. And then, of course, coming further onto the west, you'll see that this is a descending express lane. And here is what's very, very important, is that the Round Rock ISD Educational Center, or Central Administration, the Lily Delgado Administration Center, as it's named right now, is here where my browser is circling. You'll see that there is a green access driveway and a green access driveway. This is by the Chevron. This is just to the east. It's a small driveway of the administration building. As you travel westbound on the north lane, you will not be able to turn left to these driveways. And we will not be accessible as an administration at this site from the north lane turning left. On the eastbound lane from Deepwood, again, driving east, as this road beyond our property, starting here at Chevron, then the express lane will start rising or ascending to the overpass again. There will be 2 right-hand turn accesses here at Chevron, or at our west parking, and of course at our east parking. However, the access road along 620 eastbound, the new access road, is literally going to be just 20 feet from our property line, which is a very faint line here. The curb, the south curb, will be right adjacent to our property, which is very high speed traffic and very noisy traffic. Now that's important to share as I make a transition to another graphic. So I'm going to stop sharing this graphic and go to a second graphic. Let's see. As we do that, I need to go to another location here, because that was not in my file. So here we are here. All right. And coming back to share that. And here it comes now. So this graphic is a traffic circulation graphic that we have created to begin to delineate the movements and the motions of traffic at the Round Rock High School, along with the Round Rock Administration Center. And so again, north is to the left. This is north, or the orientation is north to the left. And so the arrows coming from the top of the page down is westbound traffic. So following the red line is eastbound or westbound traffic that has taken the exit off of 620, approximately a quarter mile to the east. And as you may exit off of 620, you'll come to the overpass. This is where Lake Creek and 620 intersect, and this is where the overpass is. To be able to access the high school property, there will be a stoplight under the overpass at Lake Creek, and you'll have to turn left at the stoplight. Go south on Lake Creek until you arrive at the parking area at Round Rock High School on the north side, and work your way through the parking area. And as you come working through the parking area, then of course this little area is a bit confused because of the protection of the oak trees there. Turning right, coming down the east side of the administration building to parking in this location. The black dot represents the entry to the administration center. And so obviously that is a challenge for anyone coming to the administration center to find their way through without good wayfinding. The blue line, and some people see this blue line as a purple line, again, westbound on this 620 express lane. You're still in the express lane. Now remember, you cannot turn left at the administration facility. The only way to access the administration facility westbound is to go all the way to the stoplight at Deepwood, do a U-turn, and come around the light at Deepwood and come back down the express lane and then turn right at Chevron to our west parking lot here, or turn right at the small drive on the east side. However, there's another way to reach the administration building, and that is on the express lane westbound to go to Deepwood, turn left at the light, go south all the way to the entry to the Round Rock High School, which is on the west side. As you enter that main entry, turn left, take the fire lane, follow the fire lane around back to the north, and that fire lane comes around the north side of the building, down to the east, past the band practice pad, and then into the campus where there are students moving back and forth in this location and parent drop-off in this location, and cross over into the west parking lot to the administration building, and then to find your way back to the entry of the administration center. The complication is that as 620 continues to improve and under construction, our traffic circulation will become more and more difficult by whatever direction you arrive at this building and or even high school as parents and buses. And so we have traffic that is mixing with student traffic as well as parent traffic, as well as yellow fleet transportation traffic. And of course, we have administration traffic coming to this location, as well as in this parking area and over into these parking areas at Round Rock High School. So this is simply just a notification that there is a need to begin to solve this situation. We have a safety issue that is obviously imminent, and as the construction continues on 620, there is going to be a need for solutions in regards to administration and Round Rock in the collaboration of traffic and access. And so I'll pause there and see if there are any questions from you all trustees. Okay.
I don't think there were any questions. Were there any motions coming out of closed? Mr. Math?
Yes, Madam President. I move to postpone closed session item E2 until June 4th.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to postpone closed session item E2 until June 4th. I think I can see everybody right now, so by show of hands, all those in favor? I think I see 6. Oh, Nikki, are you? Okay, so 7. Any opposed? Okay, so I just want to be sure then I have place 1, Nikki, you are opposed to postponing, or you're for postponing? You kind of froze.
For postponing.
Okay,
I couldn't hear.
Okay, so we're 7-0 to postpone. And I believe that's the only motion coming out of closed. So it is 8:31. We'll take a quick 5 to 7 minute break and be back for the superintendent report at 8:37. Why don't we go ahead and get started, and Ms. Gonzalez will probably join us as very shortly. So we will call back to order at 8:40. And we will go, our speaker did send in written comments, but we'll go ahead and do that at the very end. We'll go ahead and go to Superintendent Report G1. Dr. Flores. You're on mute still.
Thank you, President Weir, members of the board, community. Last week, the 2019-20 school year came to an official end, but I think I can safely say that it was the most unprecedented and the most disruptive school year probably in anyone's lifetime. However, I'm so proud of our staff and how they handled and responded to this trying time. For everyone, the health and safety of our students and staff has remained our top priority. Our team has come together to make sure our students and our families' basic needs were met, and we were able to continue engaging them while teaching them. In the case of our graduates, we're also able to honor them. We had 3,000 44 Round Rock ISD graduates participated in our first ever, and hopefully it may be our last commencement walks, but there are those who say maybe should not be our last. So we don't know. We'll look at that, but we applaud our 3,044 Round Rock ISD graduates who walked the stage with their families and friends. Those walks provided some absolutely beautiful moments and memories, and we have been overwhelmed with gratitude and positive feedback from our families. I want to thank the board for attending and everyone who spent time with us at Kelly Reeves last week. It was socially distant, and we tried to be as careful as possible. I want to give a special shout out to Trustee Vessa, who attended every single commencement walk, and that was 6 days at over 3 hours per. So thank you, Trustee Vessa. And as we move forward, we are hard at work planning for next year, and we know we need to remain nimble. We're not making decisions at this point, as there's still much uncertainty, and we need to be able to shift with the circumstances. However, during our scenario planning, we are reaching out to our stakeholders, including parents, for input and feedback, and we will be ready on August 20 to welcome students back in some form. Thank you to the board for your support during this historic time, and with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Presley and then staff to give you an update on our COVID-19 response. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Flores, President Weir, and trustees. Appreciate the opportunity to visit with you tonight. If you can share, Jennifer, if you can share the slide presentation. And I'll go through this. As Dr. Flores said, this is the COVID update will be kind of a standing item, I think, anytime we gather for the foreseeable future, just so you know kind of what's going on. We'll continue to update you as well in Friday board updates, as well as in these live meetings. I guess this is a virtual meeting, but I'm calling it a live meeting. We're all here. So Jennifer, if you go to the next slide. A lot of good work, as Dr. Flores says, going on. One of the things I'll bring up to speed on in technology, we're gearing up to purchase some more devices so that we can move to a one-to-one distribution of devices for kindergarten through 12th grade starting first through 12th grade starting in the fall. We're doing an analysis right now of the devices that we have that are still usable, the ones that are beyond their life. And I know Mr. Gabehart's working with Dr. Oddix to determine how many we actually need to purchase. Some are already on order, but the goal is to try to get those distributed. So all of our kids, this will serve us well, whether we're back in school as usual, or whether we're in a hybrid model, or whether we have to go totally virtual. So right now we're in the process of ordering some devices and also analyzing how many more exactly we need. And I guess if a student family just absolutely didn't want one, they wouldn't get one. But the mechanism for passing those out and distributing them is still yet to be determined. It depends on what we can and can't do. It could look similar to what we did after spring break when we had distribution each of our learning communities at each high school, or it could look different than that. And the cost of those devices that were purchased will be funded through the 2018 bond through some of the technology money that was appropriated there. Jennifer, you can go to the next one. So our meal distribution continues. Actually, this week on the 26th, we had to change some sites because Terry and his team they're ramping up construction and renovation on some of the campuses that were distribution sites, and just to mitigate the number of people on the campus at one time, to make sure that everything's safe for kids to pick up food. We'll continue to distribute meals through June the 30th. You can see the locations. Some remain the same and some have changed starting this week on May 26th. And right now our plan is to continue to distribute food through June the 30th. And also we're still handing out weekend meals every Friday. So a student can get meals for the weekend every Friday when they pick up their lunch. You can go to the next one. As Dr. Flores mentioned, the commencement walks were a great success. We had the number I got today was 3,044 seniors participated in that. Live stream videos are archived and available on the website. And our virtual graduation that was originally scheduled, I think, for the 5th is now moved to the 12th. And as I said, that's kind of, by the vendor, it's kind of deemed as like a movie premiere when that'll be released. And then everybody can watch the speeches from the student speakers and the principal, and they can see kind of in totality the students who participated and submitted a video or a message or a picture to be included in that virtual presentation. So, but that's to be released now. The target is June the 12th. The reason we extended from the 5th was to give more students an opportunity to participate because some students were having trouble connecting with the company and getting their information submitted. So we as a team, I say we, area superintendents, high school principals, and myself, we talked about it and decided to extend that a week. You can go to the next one. These are some of the positive comments. There's been a whole lot of really positive things said in social media. Most of it I've been told about. I haven't seen it myself, but I've also gotten some really kind emails and some kind reflections. I appreciate the trustees who also put out some kind things. And once again, to echo what Dr. Flores says, all of you came to some of the commencement walks. Hopefully you enjoyed it. I appreciate your time in coming out. But I, too, have to salute Miss Vessa because there were 12 about 3-hour sessions. So she spent probably easily 36 hours out there last week. And I think all she got on Saturday night was a rose. So thanks for participating, all of you. And hopefully you thought it went well as what we're hearing from the vast majority of our community. Each high school had a little different spin on it, but it was all special to them. And I saw a lot of happy students and families as they got to walk through. Wasn't traditional, but it was what we could do for now. So that's all that I have. Unless you have questions for my part, I'll turn it over to Mandy. Does anybody have questions about any of the things that I've just covered?
I don't have any questions, but I just, as a parent of 2 seniors, I want to say it was lovely. I thought it was so much fun for the kids, and they really did appreciate getting to walk. So I would just like to thank all of the staff. I know a lot of the staff was there for the whole 36 hours too. But just as someone who got to enjoy it, I do really appreciate all that you did for our seniors.
Well, thank you. And a lot of the credit goes to our principals and area superintendents and our campus staff as well that worked really hard to make each one of them special. So I appreciate you saying that.
And I will say it was a joy to be there for all of them. We've spent the past, I don't even know how many days now, locked inside our houses. So it was just so nice to be celebrating with the community, these incredible graduates and their accomplishments during their time in Round Rock ISD. And I too was really impressed with all of the staff and the love they showed to the students and families. And I felt it was all the comments, everyone that I interacted with and talked to was all positive. They all thought it went really, really well.
Thanks for saying that. And I need to add too, that thanks to Terry and his team that helped with the parking lot and the setup. Jeff Yarborough and his team with security working with Williamson County. And also, I've got to say thanks to all of our nurses who were out there for all the sessions. They took all of our temperatures every day and asked all the health questions before anybody could come in and screened everybody who came in the stadium. So that was a huge task, and they did it with a lot of grace. So thank them.
The communications team rocked too, Dr. Presley.
I don't want to leave out the communications team. I was going to say that next. It was everybody. It was a total team effort. So I appreciate Jenny and her team. And so I don't want to leave anybody out, and I'm sure I did. So.
How about all of the construction staff when they came to the rescue of the different things because there were hiccups. There were hiccups on their way, but they came in and they took care of them, and that was good job.
Just a real quick comment. Again, I think it was great, the ones I was out there for, but a lot of positive comments about, is this what we do moving forward? I don't know. I know there's going to be a mix of feelings on that of what we do, and so I just hope this gives us an opportunity to have a conversation, with our campus, our high school principals and those communities about what they do want to do moving forward. Because I know still be absolutely some who say, let's go back to the way we were doing it. And some have said, this was actually better because especially for some of the older grandparents who were coming because it just was more, didn't have to get pushed around an arena and all that. So anyways, I just hope that conversation happens so we can actually maybe have a new tradition. We'll see.
Make a quick comment as well. I went out there a couple of days and all the feedback I got was great. I walked up and down the lines and talked to families as much as I could, social distancing, talked to staffers. And of course the weather was great. It got a little bit warm a couple of times, but other than that, everybody seemed to like it. They were in and out in a matter of 30, 45 minutes, no more than an hour. And so it was great through the communications, the principals, all the ancillary, the the work around there. So again, it went well, and I would like to consider it as an option going forward, maybe modified at each campus, but well done. Congratulations to all the seniors graduating.
And to follow up, if I may, just real quickly, we said 3,044 graduates. That's correct, that walked the stage, but 80 to 85 of the 104 early college high school graduates walked 2 weeks prior receiving their virtually they walked, but they from ACC, their associate's degree. So 80 students out of the 104 that walked on that evening. So it's the legacy class. So I wanted just to point that out as well. Thanks.
All right, so
I would be remiss if I didn't say anything just as another mom of a senior. And I do have to just say that initially my senior was a little not as interested because I don't think he really knew what he was getting himself into. And at the end, he was so excited, texting friends, hey, if you haven't been out, come do this. This is super cool. And you're not done with me being a senior mom. I have another senior next year. So I guess now she is a senior. So I'm anxious to see how you guys handle this for next year because this was really well received. And that says a lot coming from an Aggie who likes traditions. So I was very excited about the way it was pulled off. And I don't know who worked the weather out, but 5 days out, it looked like we were going to have rain for most of it. And I don't know if there was a single drop the whole week. So I cannot say enough good things. Administration, I mean, I had people saying, oh, good job, board. And I made it very clear that the board did not have anything to do with this. This was entirely a feat accomplished by our administrative staff. So Moss kudos.
The board allowed us to do it, so thanks.
all right, so with that, I'll turn it over to Mandy Estes, who's going to talk about the Crisis Monitoring Priority 2. Mandy, I believe you're next.
Yes, good evening, President Weir and trustees. I do want to request, President Weir, your permission on these next two slides. They are incorporated as part of G1, and they're listed on the agenda as G3. So with your consent, go ahead and just roll this part into the COVID. Is that
absolutely? We're going to consolidate what's left of our agenda. Absolutely. Please go forward.
Okay. Thank you very much. Jennifer, if you can go to the next slide. Thank you. So this is Crisis Monitoring Priority number 2, and it's a report on the Summer Learning Instructional Plan. Next slide, please, Jennifer. This slide is a repeat from 2 weeks ago. You may recall, trustees, that I introduced the summer learning program that would be a two-pronged approach. The first one is an optional opportunity for all of our Round Rock ISD students to engage in learning from home over the summer. This is not for credit or for skipping a grade level, but instead it's to continue the cadence of learning during the summer. And again, this is leveraging TEA-created curriculum materials, but we are pairing those resources with instructional videos and facilitation, if you think sort of a help desk style, from Round Rock ISD staff between June 1st and through July 24th. Although the curriculum is designed for 8 weeks, I think I mentioned 2 weeks ago that similar to Netflix, which was just referenced, students could move through these activities at a more rapid pace if they so desire. The resources are entirely online by grade level for core content courses. However, for parents who desired a printed copy, Round Rock ISD is covering the printing and shipping costs for those packets to go directly to homes, and they're being drop shipped from TEA. So it's a nice service they're providing at a small cost. As of midday today, just over 6,000 of our students have registered to participate. About 70% of those are at the elementary school level, 20% middle school, and 10% high school. Jennifer,
can I ask real quick, when are the packets going to actually be mailed? If people signed up for that, when should they be looking in their mailbox for that?
We are hoping next week those will be coming. I know we placed 2 orders as soon after we pushed the initial registration form. We got quite a few people, and so we went ahead and placed an order then. And then just this week placed a second order. So I think they should be arriving very soon. Okay, so the second prong of summer programming, if you will, is our summer learning. Now, this is our more traditional intervention for students who meet eligibility or qualify for this program based on their academic performance. And so it's a needs-based summer intervention. Our elementary and middle school program will be for students entering second through students entering 8th grade. And these students, to the maximum extent possible, we're going to be serving in groups of 12. This program will involve face-to-face virtual instruction through video conferencing with a teacher, and also students will engage in independent practice and assessment using online math and reading tools that we have available. It begins on June 8th. It'll run 6 weeks. And to the maximum extent that we can, we are trying to use teachers who know the students. Now, that's not working out in every case, just to be completely transparent, but where possible, we're trying to pair teachers on the campus working with students who attend that campus, or at least within the learning community. We think that'll be very helpful for the kids. As of today, we have 2,760 students who are registered for this program. And then the high school portion of that will be for our rising 9th through 12th grade students, so students who were in 8th through 11th this year. The 9th grade program is going to focus on pre-teaching Algebra 1 and English concepts, and also shoring up any foundational knowledge that students may have been lacking. We have about 292 students enrolled in that as of today. The 10th through 12th grade students will focus more on recovering credit. So this is for students who maybe have fallen behind where we would hope they would be on their credits at this point in their high school journey, and also for students who have not yet been successful on an end of course exam or demonstrated the proficiency to meet the individual graduation committee requirements. And we have, those numbers are a little bit more fluid now, but we have over 1,000 and probably approaching 1,300 students in that program. And of course, as in every year, an additional program that for our students with special education identification. Now they can participate in either of the first two programs, but we also will provide extended school year programming, and that also will be virtual with video conferencing between the teacher and the students. This service will be 2 weeks in June and also 2 weeks in July. And this is based on ARD committee decisions based on documented regression during previous breaks in schooling. And I know that's been a question for some of our parents, but the way that works is data is collected before a summer break and after a summer break, or before a Christmas break and after the Christmas break to determine that need. And next slide, Jennifer. And this one I know is on everyone's minds, and Dr. Flores referred to some of this, as did Dr. Presley earlier. As these summer programs launch, we are starting to turn our attention towards reimagining what the fall might look like, and a big emphasis on might there. To this end, we have district committees that are discussing logistical what-ifs, while we also are looking to TEA and our federal, state, and local health authorities to provide further guidance as the summer continues. As you know, we have mentioned a few times that we developed guiding principles for our COVID planning, and these will also serve us as guideposts as we plan for the fall. Those principles are that we first and foremost want to prioritize student and staff safety and well-being, focus on equity, stay flexible because the situation is evolving all the time, and then centralize communication. Unfortunately, at this time, we don't have a crystal ball, and so we know we can't yet predict how the next school year will look. As I said before, it's a fluid situation, and decisions are going to be based on further guidance that we expect to be coming in the next few weeks. However, we're starting to look at the impact of 3 hypothetical scenarios and what that might mean for district operations and logistics. And you see the 3 scenarios here on this slide. One would be that we return in person with no social distancing required. And while that may sound like it's the simplest, and it probably is, it would be returning as we do typically, there still would be some decisions to be made about isolating ill students, reworking the curriculum to make sure that we spiral back to some of the content that students engaged in this spring at home, et cetera. 2 would be more of a hybrid model where we would have some face-to-face instruction combined with distance learning. And these are some of the models, if any of you have been following the return to school in some other countries such as Sweden and Denmark, Korea, they are coming back at limited capacity. Students are coming in shifts, and they're coming in for smaller groups, some face-to-face, maintaining 6 feet social distancing, and then they're combining that with some learning at home. And then the third one would be an all virtual learning environment. This third model would require that the commissioner waive attendance requirements for next year, as was done this spring. And I know there are many districts that are lobbying for that, and certainly we are in those ranks as well. We put some information about those efforts in a board update about a month ago, I believe. So the reality is we know we may find ourselves in all of these situations at different points of in time next year. And we also know that we may have some rolling closures, as we're referring to them, situations in which maybe a school or perhaps the whole district might temporarily close and reopen due to an outbreak or due to maybe an infection at a specific campus. So,
Mandy, can I just ask one question while we're on the slide?
Absolutely.
So, you know, a lot of the parents that I talk to are really feeling like they want the option of just total virtual. And so are we, like, cause I kind of see that whatever happens, whether it's, you know, we go back in a blended way or traditionally, there's going to be a significant portion of our student population. And we're going to see that as we come up into the surveys, which, by the way, are uncannily, like, couldn't believe how close they were mirroring what is happening in Europe. It was crazy because I've studied the percentages and they're like completely aligned. But I think that there will be at least 10%, just like it said on the survey, of parents who really want a virtual model. And so is that something that, I know we have to have TEA to sign off on that, but is it kind of like we're preparing like all of these simultaneously?
Absolutely. That's right. You hit the nail on the head. I do agree. I think we're going to have some parents that are going to be fearful of having their children return, whether it's for, some of our kids have extended family at home that may be older individuals in the household or family members that are immunocompromised. And so we know that. And it's interesting that you mentioned the constituents in your community, because Dr. Acosta and I had a conversation about this not long ago. And he too shares that concern that we may have some of our students and families that don't return and that really want to participate at least early in the year, maybe not the entire year, or maybe in a virtual learning environment. So that said, to your point, yes, while we don't have the funding mechanism approved with that attendance waiver yet, I am hopeful, and in fact, on a phone conference, a Zoom conference earlier this week, the commissioner indicated that he knew many people were asking about that, and that he hoped to have some guidance out in about 2 weeks on that. That said, we are definitely making plans as though that will happen. I think that it almost has to, in my opinion, but I do see that we may have, just like you said, some families who really want that option, at least for a portion of the year, if not all year, while others are going to want the hybrid option. And then I know we've had some emails from some families who are saying, don't worry about it, just open the schools. The kids need to be back all day, all of them. And so our community has very diverse opinions about this, and all guided most likely by their own personal situations. So the teams that are working on all three of these scenarios are in the areas that you see here on the slide: safety and facilities, HR and legal, curriculum and instruction, student support services, and professional development. And so what we're doing is looking at those technical and logistical situations that we typically operate under, and we're starting to have conversations about how those might change under any one of those models or a combination of those models. And just as Trustee Vessa referenced, Kathy's going to share with you the results from student and parent at-home learning survey and a staff work-from-home survey. We are looking at those as well as the Thought Exchange survey that was done a few weeks before those. And you may recall that Thought Exchange survey asked our stakeholders to identify what the district should consider as we plan to return in the fall. So lots of information that we've gathered from our community, our stakeholders, and of course, as more guidance comes, is provided to the local districts, then we'll definitely keep the board and our community informed, and we'll be soliciting their feedback.
Mandy, I just had one quick question. When you were talking about on slide 8, the number of kids who were signed up to do the tier 2, the 2760 and then the almost 1300 in the high school, how do those numbers compare to, say, previous years? Are we pulling in more students, or is it about the same?
I'd have to get that information for you. My quick answer is I believe those are higher numbers than what we've had before, but I can definitely get that information and send it out in a board update.
Thanks. And I can't see people, so if you have a question, trustees, go ahead and just ask. I don't hear anything.
Okay, and I believe I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Audix for some information about funding. Jennifer, can you go to the next slide?
Yeah, so in terms of our year-to-date expenses so far on COVID, the non-payroll expenses through May 21st is $132,000. That's mainly for personal protective equipment, masks, gloves, hand sanitizer, and then the cleaning supplies, the hot spots, so the students would all have, anyone that didn't have internet in their homes would be able to have hotspots that would be able to give them Wi-Fi access, and printing home, like for home learning packets. In terms of our payroll expenditures, as of the end of April, that was $276,000. What that is what we pay over and above the, like, everyone's continuing to get paid, but if you're asked by your supervisor to come into work, like for essential work that needed to be done, those that came in received premium pay. This is just for hourly staff, non-exempt staff that were asked to come in. So the custodians, payroll still had to be done, bills still had to be paid, IT staff was working, and so the total of all of that is $409,000. And we track that. We've got it anytime we spend something on a COVID-related expense. Accounting has got that set up to where it's coded to its own accounts. We can keep a running total of that.
So I have a question, Dr. Onyx. I know that we were anticipating beating our budget by 18 million before COVID, and then we ended up beating it by 22. So, or we estimate that. So would you say that, we actually had a savings of about $4 million then?
No, the piece is kind of this, where we're at, and each month it's kind of like you progress, and where I'm at right now and I just literally was in the process when Mandy turned it over to me to send an email over to our accounting to say, hey, since we're about to close May, can we get an estimate for May to where that's through 11 actual fiscal months, to just have one more month to guess at. But at the end of April's results, trending out the last 2 months, I would say that we would beat at that time, what I was telling the board is that I thought we'd beat our budget by $30 million, and we budgeted a $7.4 million budget shortfall. So the 22 that you reference is actually how much would be left over after beating, a budgeted loss, be 22 to the good. And tomorrow, if I can, I'll get updated numbers based on the May expense. I think the truth that I'm seeing so far is that with COVID, hey, nobody wanted it, don't want it again, any type of thing, but it didn't hurt us from a financial end because the state, continued to pay, and some of our expenses, the electric bill, utilities, things like that went down as a result. Now, hey, some things like this went up, but on net, it didn't hurt us financially.
Are there any other questions? I don't hear any other questions, Dr. Audix.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, I actually did have one thought. A lot of the people I've been talking to feel like, and then this is way out there, but just a thought in terms of figuring out how much it would cost. And not that we're making a decision or anything like that, but what would it cost to provide everyone on staff a mask every day? Because if we look at what Europe's doing, and Asia, they are requiring students and faculty or staff to wear masks every day, and they're providing them. And so, I just think that that's something we should think about. Like, how much is that? How much would we have to budget if we follow that model? Obviously, we have not made a decision as to follow that model or not, but I think it's a data point that's important to know. Like, how much would that cost?
Okay.
I've got a question. So maybe this is both. Y'all hear me all right? I got a question. Maybe this is both for you, Kenneth and Terry. Is the hourly workers? Did you cover that? Is that considered in these expenses?
Yes.
You're talking about some of the other expenses are lower, but all the people that are working, that are getting that maybe aren't working or working part time, or that includes custodians, bus drivers, things like that. Hourly workers, are you calculating that in there somehow?
Yes, like this, what I'm showing you here in terms of the payroll expenditures, this is the premium portion, not like an entire payroll, but what is the incremental cost that is as a result of COVID.
So this is what you're saying, this is the premium overhead, but is that true? Am I reading that right?
Yes.
Okay, so some of the people who are coming in, if they come in, they get paid time and a half. Is that right?
Correct.
But not everybody is coming in, and they're just getting paid their standard hourly rate. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so this is just the premium pay. Now, does that go on after June 1st, next month? Does it keep going, or is this all through the summer, or does this stop at the end of June 30th, or when does this stop?
Right. And so what we literally are planning, like the communication that's going out, and we're going to be making a formal communication. But, staff has been told that effective June 1, that's when the transition is going, that if your manager asks you to come in, the pay starting June 1 goes to straight time. And then that's the plan. I mean, we're at the end of May, so Monday is the start of June 1, and so that's when that transition will happen.
So, but do they still have the option not to come in for fear of health reasons?
We're not saying, hey, if you don't come in, you've lost your job. It's not that. It's, hey, if we think we really, like if your manager thought, hey, it's like, okay, Chad, I really would like you to come in. This is important. Hey, would you come in? If you said, hey, I'm afraid for my life or whatever situation, I'm not willing to, then I, as the manager, I'm not saying anything that you have to.
Okay. So, and that goes on through June, and then starting July 1st, the new calendar fiscal year, does it change at that point?
That decision, we're having discussion about that right now. That hasn't been formally decided.
Okay. Because I could see how somebody, I don't want to belabor this, but I can see how somebody might say, well, they're going to get paid and they don't have to go in. I don't know how much work is needing to be done, but I would imagine there's still custodial work that needs to be done on some of the campuses, a lot of the campuses, at least just for upkeep. All right, thank you.
All right, are there any more questions, trustees? Okay, I don't hear any, Dr. Addix.
Okay, thank you.
So, Dr. Flores, I think we're ready to go to G2.
Yes, we are. Our crisis priority measures are now going to be delivered in the parent and staff at home learning surveys by Dr. Kathy Malerba. And some of the survey responses were alluded to earlier, which do go into, so this is important. Anytime we send out surveys, this is just to all parents and all community members. Please fill those out because they do have an impact on some of the things we'll be doing as we design or reimagine our learning. So without further ado, Kathy Malerba. Dr. Malerba.
Thank you. Jennifer, if you can pull up my slide deck, I'll go ahead and get started. It's already been a long evening. So it's hard to believe that only 28 days ago, trustees had the discussion on the April 30th meeting about what we'd like the crisis monitoring priorities to be. And we've already looked at quite a bit of data if you can't consider the stakeholder feedback from the thought exchange and now the slides that we're sharing tonight. So I'm very appreciative of everyone who took the time to participate. I think it's really helping us get a picture of how our student, staff, and parents are feeling during this really unprecedented time. So I don't know if everybody's screen looks a little funny right now, but I'll just keep going. Okay. Yeah. I can still do kind of the setup. So I just want to remind everyone that across all the crisis monitoring priorities, we're really trying to take a developmental evaluation approach in which we measure frequently because conditions are changing rapidly. So yes, we took a snapshot at the end of the school year. Y'all had really prioritized wanting to hear about the instructional experience and just student staff well-being. So we definitely gathered data about that, but things could change.
I apologize for interrupting. I just want to, for anyone who's watching, if you can't see the slides that are available on the website on Board Docs. So if you're trying to follow along, that might be a good place to go. So you can.
It's actually, I'm sorry, Trustee Moses, but it's actually showing on the stream because I have two computers up. Okay. But you can actually see the slide, but
people can see it.
You don't see it. So.
Okay. So should I keep going, Jenny?
Yeah, we all have it. I have it up on my lap.
The public can see it, the board has it. So it's just something with the people in the Zoom meeting for some reason. So yeah,
Okay. So anyway, we will continue to check in with our stakeholders as the public health situation evolves and continue to report back to you. This survey did just close at midnight on the 22nd, so last Friday. So between now and then, it has just been a hustle to get the results to you. So I would definitely consider this a first look and more of a report than an analysis. That the next slide is me kind of grabbing some of the highlights that jumped out at me, but my intent really is to still provide you a full report. And so whatever questions emerge for you, those could be very helpful to me to framing up the analysis that follows. So don't be shy about sharing your questions as we go along. And that's it. We're also obviously sharing all these results with principals and all those planning teams that Mandy was talking about. So Jennifer, if you'll go to the next slide, I'll run through what caught my eye as kind of highlights in the surveys, across the surveys. So first thing I'd say is that students spent between 1 and 3 hours a day on an average day doing their schoolwork. They seem to have adjusted very well to learning online, especially when they're talked about using Google Classroom and Google Hangouts to meet with their teachers. Secondary students reported feeling very comfortable, doing well at working independently, self-paced learning, and managing their own stress and anxiety. So I thought that was a positive. Now, that's obviously a little harder for younger students. And not surprisingly, in terms of student well-being, the biggest adjustment, the hardest part, was not having access to their teachers and their classmates. I think that's probably been the hardest part of this for all of us. For parents, their biggest challenges were balancing their own work while trying to help their child or multiple children with their schoolwork. And that sense that they weren't teaching it the way that a teacher would. And I think we've all parents have kind of been there, that it can be hard to teach as well as a teacher. Parents were the group that had the strongest preference, if we had to go back to a remote model, for having live or scheduled instruction. That wasn't true for teachers, and students weren't as strongly learning one way or the other, but parents, that was a distinct preference. And at this moment, sort of knowing what we knew a week ago, about 63% of parents said they would be comfortable sending their students back to school in the fall. Among staff, they had the highest ratings for adapting well to working at home. That's for of the three groups, for department staff and campus staff. They also had challenges with balancing work and caring for their own children and teaching their own children. They had the strongest preference for self-paced instruction with periodic check-ins, which is what the model started to look like towards the end of the school year. They also greatly missed interacting with their colleagues and with students. And, as of a week ago, about 60% of district-based and almost 70% of campus-based staff said they'd be comfortable coming back to campus in the fall. So more than half, but not an overwhelming majority yet. I think there's still a lot of tentativeness out there. So Jennifer, it's going to be hard, but we're going to move through this quickly. So we'll start with parents. And yeah, I'm ready. Let's just dive in. The updates that I made to your presentation were really to put in some green boxes to kind of highlight what we're going to look at. So go ahead, Jennifer. These are just participation, the percentage of participants from each of those grade band groups. So their students were in those grade bands. We had about 4% of participants completing the Spanish version of the survey. And I love the over 15,000 parents participating. Really grateful for that. Okay, let's keep going. We'll power through. There's too many slides. These are just the demographics of our respondent group. I really was happy that we decided to include some program information. I think I'm going to continue to do that in the future because it gives a little bit richer picture of who participated than just some of the ethnicity types of questions. I'll dig into that more deeply and compare that to district rates in the written report. So let's keep going. This is that sense of parents reporting how well their child has adapted to learning at home on a scale from 1 to 10. So if 5 o'clock or 5 would be, just we're doing okay. It's a little bit better than that, but again, not an overwhelming sense that we've adapted really, really well to these circumstances. But on average, doing okay. Okay, let's keep going. Here's just the percentages I referenced earlier when I was saying between 1 and 3 hours is how most students spent their time across all the different grade bands. Okay, we can keep going. These percentages are a little lower because what's reported here is adjusting very well to these aspects of school closure. So, I think the majority of respondents probably were in the somewhat well category. So, this was tough on folks. The changes in routines, not getting to participate in activities at school, and then, of course, not seeing teachers and classmates and friends is tough for adjustment for everyone. Okay. And here's just the highlights, that center box really highlighting that secondary students were feeling pretty confident about working independently and working at their own pace and managing stress. Again, that The technology piece seemed to work pretty well for most folks. So because again, these are rates of people reporting that things went very well, right? And then at the bottom, it's harder. Fewer folks said that it went very well to have less interaction with teachers and other students. Okay, ready. These are the big problems for parents, highlighted that right up front too. Balancing all their other responsibilities, teaching their other students, and having that confidence that they're teaching it as well as a teacher could. Okay. This is another slider question with a scale of 1 to 10. Most of these are sort of in the middle, either just the right amount of work. The work was pretty much appropriately difficult. The only real trend here, of course, is that the younger kids just needed a lot more help from their parents than the older kids who were working almost independently. Okay. And pretty high levels of satisfaction with support from teachers, at least somewhat satisfied, and a lot very satisfied, which is great. And here's where you're seeing that pretty strong preference among parents for live scheduled video instruction should we have to return to remote learning, and then the second choice being what we implemented this spring, which was the mostly self-paced with regular check-ins. Okay, and this is the rates across parents of folks who feel comfortable coming back. 10% are saying no, I'm not comfortable at all, and then 27% don't know yet. Okay, Jennifer, we can go ahead and skip right on to the first slide for students. And this one was kind of interesting. We had intended, just like our climate surveys, for this to be a survey for grades 3 through 12. And the links went out both to parents and students in our instructional materials. So we did have an open response comment. So a small number of K through 2 students responded, maybe with a little bit of help from mom or dad. And only 1% of our student respondents took the Spanish version of the test. And again, I'll dig into the comparisons on those in the bigger report, but they're here if you'd like to review them. Okay. And on average, students were feeling maybe a little more confident, though who knows, the 3rd through 5th graders were feeling most confident about their ability to adapt to learning at home. Otherwise, kind of looking a lot like the parents here, maybe a little above average on my adapting. Okay, next one. And just like parents, students are reporting between 1 and 3 hours a day of doing schoolwork during the spring period there. And again, really strong trend for doing well using Google Classroom. So I thought that was pretty powerful for the instructional teams thinking about how implementation might look like, what it might look like in the future. And then again, the biggest challenge, not seeing teachers, not seeing classmates and friends. Okay. These are not huge rates of having a problem with these various aspects of learning at home, but at the top, between 20 and 30% of students saying sometimes they had trouble understanding what they needed to do. So I think that's good feedback for those planning teams to take a look at what students were struggling with, though on average, these rates were not terribly high. And again, mostly kind of hitting the mark on how difficult was the work, how much did you have to do, and then younger students needing a little more help than older students to get the work done. So here, the students were kind of all over the place on how they would like to learn if we had to go back to virtual learning. The older students were most comfortable with self-paced learning, as we'd kind of seen in other items. And then a pretty good pretty good chunk of the younger students were interested in more of learning in real time online. Okay. And on to staff. I'm trying to power through this, y'all. Good response from campus and district staff. You can see the breakdown of the different staff types that participated. And of the three groups, as I said, our district staff seem to have adapted best to this disruption into working from home. And that's across all different groups. Okay. A lot of folks, very high percentages of folks reporting some of these technology-enabled aspects of their work, getting tech support, using Google Classroom, remote meetings, being able to stay on top of their work. All that seemed to go very well for folks, which is great. And this is campus-based staff. And then again, at the bottom, you know, what was hardest were the relationship pieces. Sorry, Jennifer, you can keep going. And likewise for district-based staff, you know, the vast majority of these things, folks are rating that they did very well at making adjustments, especially on some of the technical things and staying in touch with teams, which is great. In terms of problems, I kind of highlighted that up front. It's that balancing your own work and caring for your children was really tough. And the most challenging piece for our campus-based staff was communicating with students. So that's another thing to dig in a little more deeply on, see what's behind that, and get that to our planning teams. And again, not a problem at all on a lot of these technology-related items for district-based staff. So far and away, both in terms of support from your own campus or department or from the district, folks are feeling at least somewhat and often very satisfied with the support they're getting from those groups. And here's where you see that distinct preference for the self-paced instruction among our teaching staff. It's probably, you know, at least in part driven by their ability to be a little more flexible with caring for their children and their other responsibilities. Though a quarter of them did seem to be in favor of the scheduled online learning. And so here's that comfort level with coming back. A decent number of folks just do not know at this point, which I think is probably fair given the circumstances. And okay, now we're ready for questions. And as I said, would love to dig in deeply on your questions in our follow-up written report.
I saw Mason first and then Steve. Matt.
Thank you, Madam President. And thank you, Kathy, for this information. I think you're right. It's a very top level. And even when I went through it, the first time I had a few thoughts, and even now again going through it, a few more kind of thinking through. But can't remember, do we get this by campus level too? Because I want to make sure on some of these pieces that if we're noticing there might be one learning community or a couple of campuses that where internet connectivity was a significant issue,
okay,
that we're zeroing there to address any equity issue that pops up there.
Okay.
Yeah, that and really any of the other items as well. So there might be a need where I know I've seen some school districts looking at this model where, you know, some students are starting working at home, and then others are who have more of a need or have poor communication, or poor internet access at home, are coming back first, so they can address that equity piece. So I'd just be curious and just whenever you did do the full report, be able to kind of talk if there's any hot spots we see that we need to focus on.
Okay, I think that's a great one. Thank you.
Mr. Math.
Yes, first of all, thank you. I thought this was a very well put together survey, and the data is very robust and comprehensive. So kudos there. One thing I was a little bit disappointed about was that the vast majority of students are spending 1 to 2 hours, maybe 2 to 3, and this is all new to all of us. I don't know what my expectation should have been, but I was probably hopeful that it would be higher. And is that consistent with your hope and expectation? And maybe do we have any ideas for how we could get students to spend 3 to 4 hours or over 4 hours? One thought that I had, and I'll just throw this out, is there an opportunity for gamification? I know gamification is just something that today's kids just love. And if they get, badges for going to the next level, that sort of thing, it's motivating.
Oh, good. It's Mandy.
I think that's a great idea, Mr. Math. And in response to your question about the hours, we along the way received interesting feedback from parents. Some were very worried about the amount of screen time that students were engaged in. And remember, too, that some of the activities were not all in front of a screen. We also included in their learning activities for them to physically exercise and so forth, to go and search for things around their house and use utensils to store and all kinds of things like that. So I would say that for us as a staff, that we did not want to go in heavy with lots of hours in front of a screen in planning for this during this time. We knew we had some kids who had taken positions temporarily, at least at HEB and fast food restaurants. Even in some of our more affluent schools, we were hearing stories of kids that were going to work during the day to help support their families. And then we were also worried about access to devices. We did, as you know, we checked out a ton of devices to our students and families and some hotspots in support of that. But we did not check out one per student. And so in many of our families, we had kids who were maybe 2 or 3 kids that were sharing the district device that had been checked out to that family. In an ideal world where we had a virtual learning academy for which students signed up for, not during a pandemic, everybody had their own device, then absolutely I would say that would not be enough time spent on learning during the day. I think given the situation that we were in, that would probably be about the right amount for most families to manage.
Kind of follow-on question to that, if I can, real quick. So, did you say this, or maybe I missed it or look at it? Are these hours self-reported? The hours it says on page, whatever, the hours in front of the screen online, is that on average weekday? So starting on page 7 and things like that. So is that self-reported, or does it go back to what Amy was asking for in the past, where you can measure how many people are logging in, how long they're staying on Google Docs, things like that? That's all self-reported.
Oh, yes, sir. It was self-reported, and the categories had been predetermined, so you just pick the best estimate. Parents and students did that.
Okay, well, that's, again, that kind of goes back to, are they engaged? Are they going around? Are they looking? Are they reading online? But it kind of goes back to measuring through Google Analytics how much time they're actually engaged on a website. It could be the gamification kind of related to that as well. Thank you.
I think I'd like to add a couple things to that too. I think a couple other contributing factors were probably the pass-fail model we went into. You did enough to pass because you weren't making an A or a B or a C. You were doing enough work. So that probably factored into some of our students' decisions on how much time they spent. And also the time of year, because a lot of, there was still some new learning, but there was also a significant amount of reviewing and things like that at that time of year. So I think we would see changes in that moving forward in the fall with if we go to a different grading model. Once again, it's kind of hard to leverage what a kid's actually doing and what somebody's helping them do or doing for them. But I think the amount of new learning when a new school year starts too will be significant. Will have a significant impact on that. Just a couple other factors I thought may have played into those numbers.
Amber, I saw you had a question.
Actually, y'all answered it in the discussion part of it. So I also think that we will have better participation if UIL activities in the upper grades are now aligned again with grades. And our students are, fact of the matter, some only perform so that they can participate in their extracurricular activities. And so if that were to return, I think we'll see that. I think I'm the only person on the board with an elementary school student. And to Mr.
Whoa.
Oh, that's right. Sorry, Mason, you do.
I got two.
Yeah, and you got a younger one than that. But more requirements for elementary kids will push our parents over the edge because those, if you go look at the results, it's the hardest to keep them focused and independent workers and things like that. So, sorry about that, Mason.
No, believe me, I'm very much worried that I have two elementary school kids after going through this for the second part of the school year.
Yep. I have a sixth grader, and I will say that's why I checked on my survey live, get them in front of a teacher, make somebody else not entertain them, but have them focused on someone else other than me for that hour or 45 minutes or something. I know why parents put that on their survey. Were there any other questions?
I just wanted to, this was just about, just so that people understand, and I'll confirm this with Kathy, this is just the survey results, but we also have in our crisis monitoring calendar that we're going to be looking at actual data, like real data too, like how many assignments were completed, or that kind of thing, so that we can look at more. The survey data I think is super helpful. Thank you so much, Kathy. I agree with Steve. I thought it was a good survey, but I do wanted to make people aware that we have more actual data back from coming soon.
What we settled on was course completion data to give a sense of how many students successfully completed the year in spite of everything. And then, of course, there'll be more opportunities for successful completion over the summer. So there'll be really 2 reports on that.
Great. Were there any other questions? That was super fast, and I'm assuming, Dr. Miller, if we have other questions as we go back and look at it, we can send those to you.
Yes, please do. I was just going to remind myself when the report. I was intending to send it right before we break for the 2 weeks. So if you have additional follow-up questions over the next week or so, I should be able to address them.
I did have one.
Oh, hold on one second, Corey. Let Amber go, and then you'll go.
I know I'm throwing this at you for the very first time, and don't even try to answer it, but having 2 kids in high school who took a lot of AP tests, we had 11 AP tests over the course of 2 weeks. We're highly stressful this year compared to years in past, and I would love to see, when I think those results come out in July, how our students performed on their AP tests. If we have access, I don't know if that data is accessible to the district, when it's accessible, but just how they, I tried to encourage my kiddos to watch the YouTube channels, and it lasted for a couple of weeks, and then they slowly lost interest in the YouTube videos and things. But I think that would be an interesting measure to see how this year's performance relates to previous year's performances on the AP testing. And there's so many things that could play into that. Change of location, technology issue, all kinds of things. But I think that might be something. And again, just a suggestion, throw it out to Dr. Flores. And if you think that that's something good for your staff to look at, of how we finished up the year with those AP students, would be my only last suggestion.
No doubt. I was talking to Michelle Swain the other day at graduation. She was in the tent, and she was talking about that, and we'll get that. And Mandy Estes is already talking about that as well. So as soon as we get that data, we definitely will share that, because we are definitely interested.
Or you had one more question?
So can we make this presentation, like, can we send this out via, our social media and on our email in terms of like the Health and Wellness Weekly? Because I think a lot of people that took the survey are actually kind of interested in seeing what other people thought too.
So, Corey, our last Health and Wellness Weekly was last week, but now we're transitioning to a summer e-news that we plan to do twice a month. So we do have one coming up very early in June. I think what we could do is do a sort of a web news story that we summarize it and then link to the presentation. And then we can push out that link in that first summer e-news.
Sure. I think that's great, and I think that'd be a good thing to do. My only question is it better sending out the raw data or waiting until Dr. Malerba finishes her deeper dive?
I'll defer to Dr. Malerba on that, but I would definitely work with her to make sure that all the language that we used in that news story was appropriate, and know that once we do that, and this is a good thing, I think that's something the media will pick up on as well. So we want to make sure that message is exactly what it needs to be and accurate.
Well, one thing that's nice is that this report has already been publicly presented and it's accessible anyway. So for me, it's just as well to send this out along with Jenny's short report. Yeah. I mean, it's sort of data all by itself, right? There's not a lot of context, but it's been shared publicly, so.
I think parents will be interested to see it. I mean, I probably will go ahead and post it on my social media just so that people that responded can be aware, because, I mean, obviously not everyone is tuning in at 10 o'clock at night to watch this, nor will they watch it recorded. And so sometimes we have to kind of reach out to them and let them know, hey, this is what we're hearing from you.
I think that's an excellent suggestion, Trustee Vesta. We push it out through our channels, asking them to do it. And as a parent, you're right. I fill one out for my child. I want to see what the results are. So I think that's a great suggestion.
All right. Were there any other questions for Dr. Malerba? All right. I don't see any. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
We had no discussion items. We have our action items for consideration by consent, though during our agenda setting, I know Corey had some questions about number 4. I don't know if Mr. Worcester is still on.
Yes, Terry is prepared. So go ahead, Mr. Worcester. On item for approval of job contracts.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Flores. And so I'll be very brief in that this item is an item to cover a need to be expedient in construction, coordinating with what we call job order contractors. And you've seen before the job order contracting as we've brought before the board. And in the description of this particular agenda item, of course, when we abide by our policy of CV local, that means that any construction project more than $100,000 must come before the board for approval. Well, in the late part of the spring semester here and going into the summer, we obviously have ongoing activities such as the installation of playground equipment, and we may assign 2 or 3 installations to a single contractor that will take us over $100,000. So we're asking for permission to put a ceiling on job order contracting through the end of the year, and so that we have the expediency to be able to get those projects done. Now, some of the projects that we are working on are such as portable moves, playgrounds, things of that nature, and so they're small and minor projects. And so there is an upcoming FFC meeting that we would like to be able to bring out and mention several projects that we're working on, and that Great Oaks will be one of those, so that we can bring that before the FFC meeting. We have been coordinating with administrators throughout throughout the district, and so that there's good news in many places that we'd like to coordinate with.
Okay, I was the one that pulled this. So, we had talked about how about 4 million of this 5 million is just stuff that was approved already via bond, like the playgrounds and whatnot. And then about $1 million of this was actually pretty. Can you go through the $1 million? And I know we had quite a long conversation about how much of that was going towards the Great Oaks improvements, given the boundary changes that we decided on in February. So, and then if you could just go over I know that some of this money is related to equipping our schools also for any necessary improvements related to COVID, like additional hand washing stations or things like that. So if you could just go into a little more detail on that, I think that would be really instructive.
Well, specifically for portables is that, of course, a portable move is not a bond project. And so in order to move a portable, though we're not buying portables, we are moving them. And so, for example, at Great Oaks, it has been determined that there will be 4 new classroom portables established at Great Oaks. And so as that is being coordinated with the administration, the cost to I'll use the word harvest those portables from one campus and bring them over to another campus and set them up tends to be the collective cost of approximately $1 million. The remainder of those projects beyond, let's say beyond the minor moves of portables and or the establishment of, for example, as we look forward to students onboarding again in August, is that we know that hand washing is important. And so to discuss options and detailing with the maintenance department and how we are able to set up perhaps hastily erected hand washing stations outside or even inside the buildings, but we don't know all those details yet. And so we're working through those processes and how many and where and that sort of thing. So it's still a bit unknown, but we need to have the flexibility to accomplish that. And for example, if we move a wet portable, such as the ones at Great Oaks, they need to be tied to a waste system. And so we may have a need to hire a plumber to be able to tie those portables to a waste system, to existing waste in the campus infrastructure. So that's kind of the makeup of that. Much of the work is related to bond projects by way of flooring and or installations of playground equipment, because we have purchased the equipment, because we can buy equipment, but we have to install it, and that the installation tends to be categorized as a construction project.
So some other things that we had discussed too is like there were going to be some improvements made at Great Oaks in terms of traffic patterns, knowing that we're bringing a substantial number more students there from that they've had in the recent years, and so that you had some plans and were in the works for trying to make sure that they had a better situation in terms of managing their traffic.
Making sure is not necessarily the appropriate vocabulary for tonight, but there are ongoing conversations with the jurisdiction there that is in charge of that, and that is the local MUD authority. And so we are talking about how that may be improved and or other solutions. And so again, going through boundary is late, mid semester, and that those are pretty weighty improvements that impact the streets and things of that nature. And so we have to work through that.
I just have one thing, Mason, and then we'll go to. I was just going to ask Terry if we could get a maybe just a list in the board updates of what was done once you've done this.
Absolutely. In fact, that will be an agenda item in the Facility and Finance Committee, so that we're able to discuss that more thoroughly based upon that committee, and then of course that will be uploaded to the entire board.
Awesome. Okay, great. Thank you. Mr. Moses.
Thank you, Madam President. I move the board adopt action items I-1 through I-4 by consent.
Okay, we have a motion and a second from Ms. Feller, even if it was kind of silent. To approve action items for consideration by consent, I-1 through 4. By a show of hands, all in favor? All right, I see 7. Any opposed? All right, so that passes 7-0. I'm going to take just a minute to bring Jenny back on. Our public speaker, Becky McCauley, did send her written comments to Jenny. She came on, I guess, after we were already in close. So if Jenny, would you please read the public comments?
Absolutely. So starting now. As the working group is making instructional plans for the fall, I would like to stress that the distance learning we just experienced was very difficult for families who are less fortunate. I work in many high schools in Region 13, and this is true pretty much everywhere I have a presence. The families who are pleased with distance learning are typically middle and upper class families with 2 parents at home, sometimes even have 1 parent who doesn't work. They were able to manage their children's schoolwork, communicate with teachers on a regular basis, and their children thrived in this learning environment. Then there were families similar to mine. I'm a single mom to 2 students at Round Rock High School. I work full-time, go to school full-time to upskill because my job at a nonprofit will likely be phased out soon, and we struggled greatly with distance learning. I did not have the bandwidth to adequately homeschool my children, and we pretty much gave up after the 2nd week, and credit recovery is required for the first time in our lives. Then there are families I work with who are much less fortunate than mine. Even if they have adequate technology, their home environments are not conducive to learning. They live in tiny apartments, many have multiple siblings and cousins in the home, and some had to babysit while the parents went to work. They were homeschooling not only themselves, but their siblings as well. Some students are in abusive households, and school is their only escape. We stayed up until 1 a.m. one morning in April trying to convince a friend of my daughter's not to harm themselves because she was so depressed from being in an emotionally abusive home. She feels hopeless that things would get better. That child is terrified that she won't be able to escape to school in the fall. I keep telling her I will fight as hard as I can to ensure she'll be able to go to school in August. This educational inequality of home learning environments became shockingly clear to me during the school closures and how less fortunate students were undoubtedly falling through the cracks on a massive scale. I have spent many nights crying for all of these students. I would like to remind the working group that when discussing plans for the fall, that it is not equitable to take grades for work done during virtual learning, since there is such stark difference in learning environments. This means that one subpopulation, the more privileged, will continue to learn and grow while everyone else falls further behind. I would also like to point out that the demographics of the parent-student survey do not match the district demographics, especially in the free and reduced lunch and ethnicity categories. So these results will not be an accurate representation of the community's feedback. As more and more data is being produced, it's clear that outside of the nursing home population, this illness is similar to a bad flu season, and we should do what we have always done in the past, close down the hotspot schools for a week or so to disinfect and let everyone else continue their learning in the classroom. The CDC recommendations are impossible to implement and result from an overabundance of caution, not reality that the data is showing, which is very little risk to the general population. This overabundance of caution has already done great damage to the education of less fortunate students. Please advocate for us and only use blended or virtual learning as a last resort, and then do not require grades for virtual learning if you do. Providing technology to the less fortunate is simple, but how do you provide equitable home learning environments to all students? The answer is, of course, is that you can't. Virtual learning is not equitable, and a world-class district advocates for all of their students. If parents are afraid to send their students back to the classroom in August because of germs, I would highly recommend that they consider transferring to a virtual school such as Connections Academy that is designed for families who excel with virtual learning. Our family is not afraid, and we look forward to getting back to the classroom and learning from the amazing teachers and staff at Round Rock High School. Go Dragons. And that's it.
Thank you. So we are now to K.
Madam
One.
President,
Yes.
send it to an item. Can we make a statement about the public comment?
I believe so. I'll let Doug answer that for sure. But yes, it was item G1 and G2
Right.
that she was speaking on.
Yes, the normal rule would be you don't respond to citizen comments, but with the new law, we now have them speaking to agenda items. So because it's an agenda item, it's for that reason you can speak to it if you wish.
I just want to say that these are our biggest fears that we've been talking about for so long, our population. And so I appreciate the individual taking the time to write this. It's heartbreaking to hear. And so thank you for taking the time to speak up, because it's very hard to hear that.
Yes, I agree. And I do, I'm sad that she wasn't able to be on and present it to herself, but thank you for reading her words, Jenny. Does anyone have any board announcements or requests for future agenda items? I see Corey waving. I saw Chad.
Corey
Chad,
first.
Okay, Corey.
I have two things. First off, we made the decision earlier in the year that we were not going to do recognitions of our students and staff during board meetings, but we were going to have a special learning community assemblies to honor those students who had amazing, and staff that had amazing achievements this year. And I just want to know, that obviously wasn't possible. And I know that we honored a lot through social media, but if there's any, thoughts on how we could recognize some of these amazing achievements in another way as well. And then my other thing was that we are actually past due for a formative evaluation of the superintendent and a board self-eval.
I think that was one of, I actually had that, I'm trying to keep a spreadsheet right now. And I know that Trustee Chadwell had brought that up also in the last couple of meetings. So we definitely need to get that scheduled. Mr. Chadwell, did you have something?
Yeah, that was again, the same three agenda item requests I've requested in the past. One of them is the board self-evaluation, finish the superintendent's quarterly formative evaluation, get the grievance report. I think Mr. Bradshaw is available at the next meeting. Is that right? And then the third thing was to do the I think there's one or two grievances still out there. So probably be a workshop. Most of it looks like it would be in closed session, and it would not require any work or very little work, I should say, from the administration other than putting together the meeting. But there'd be no reports. If I understand, if I'm doing all this right, there'd be no reports required from all the people who just presented this evening in the administration. Thank you.
All right. Just for everyone's information, I did reach out to Mr. Bradshaw for him to attend our June 18th meeting. Hopefully by that time we'll have at least some hybrid in-person, whatever people are comfortable with. I know Doug and Jenny are working on that. That was Amber's request from the last meeting. And when I was making my list, the only other thing I noticed is that in February, Trustee Math had asked about equity training. And I think now is probably a really good time for us at some point, Dr. Flores, to circle back on that. We've had George Floyd in the news. We've had all of these incidents, and we're getting ready to start our own police department. And, I think we didn't mean to ignore your request, Trustee Math, but, now would be a really good time to ensure that we're setting up our systems with our new police force so that all of our students feel safe coming to school.
Yeah, actually, with that, just to let you know, I think in July, we definitely need some time. I'm going to be meeting this week with Joyce James. And what we will talk about is how we'll have training for our board and staff as well, our team, so that we can, have that done as fast as possible. So that'll be more information this week. And again, I want to remind everybody that we haven't delayed, or I know that there was an evaluation that's necessary, and I look forward to that. And just like you look forward to the self-eval. But I just want everybody to know that everything changed on March 13th. And so we're now, with the close of school, we're ready. So whatever we need to do, let's get it done. So point well taken. Thanks.
So I'll ask Patty to send out maybe some dates for people we can try to do an evaluation. And then Mr. Math, did you have something you wanted to add about equity? Or
I appreciate Dr. Flores and the action he's going to take. But I was actually thinking even bigger and larger scope than what you had just suggested. I was wondering if there was some kind of an online module that we could roll out to all district employees and maybe even students. So I just throw that out for consideration.
Yeah, I'll have that discussion again. That's good feedback, and that'll be a topic on the agenda with Ms. James.
And you're meeting with her, you said, in July. So
No. I think this next week. I know that Laura Seegers was scheduling, and I'm hoping to have lunch scheduled actually, but I haven't really gone to a public restaurant yet. In abundance of caution, but maybe it's time to get to a restaurant if that's where she wants to go, or we'll meet virtually. Either way, we're meeting, I think, on Tuesday or Wednesday.
So could we maybe pencil that in for June 18th at our regular meeting just to give us an update?
Yeah, that'd be fine.
Okay. And then I had just to let everyone know, I'd sent Dr. Flores an email about, and I think I CC'd you, Mason, trying to get kind of back into.
I saw it. Yeah.
Oh, well, I was just trying to get us back into your BE local, your kind of stepped up timeline. I know Dr. Flores had mentioned in an email to me that staff needed more time to get stuff done when we just kind of add things. So I was kind of hoping for June that we would move things forward. So if you have any other agenda items, let us know by next week. Email Dr. Flores and I. The August meeting, Mason, is scheduled for the first day of school, which I know you wanted to avoid. And I know Doug said we have to call the special election. We have to call the election, not the special election, before August 17th. So I was just going to propose that we move our August meeting to the 13th, the second Thursday instead of the third Thursday, if that's okay with everyone. So we have time to call the election, the November election, and avoid the first day of school, because I'm going to be positive and think we're having the first day of school on the 20th. Is that all right with everybody? All right. And then my last thing was just if anyone had any questions about the message board. Jenny said that no one had emailed with any questions. So maybe, Jenny, if you could resend that email out again that had everyone's login. And if you have questions, I think the hope is to go live next week. So please make sure that you've looked at that. And if you need any one-on-one training, let either Doug or Jenny or Dr. Flores or me know.
Is that related to the two-step verification?
That was IT, but yes, you should have hopefully done that separately.
And then we sent out a link to a Google folder that had some instructions as well as a video with a voiceover for instructions. So I can resend those.
Yes, it sounds like maybe that does need to be resent. Thank you, Jenny.
I think I'm caught up on the IT training, and I think that two-step verification. I haven't done, and please let me know, Jimmy, Patty, or whoever. Thank you.
Okay. Does anyone else have anything?
I just wanted to, I know that Jenny's working on this, but.
I have to go. I apologize. I got to do it. Sorry.
Okay, bye. I know Jenny's working on two-way communication, and we had talked about how that we could have some forums for parent input, because the truth of the matter is that the task forces don't really have parent or student input in terms of next year and the goals that we have. So I know she's working on that in terms of forums.
Yes, ma'am, Trustee Vesta, as well as we're looking at the possibility of focus groups as well with parents to provide more opportunity for input.
All right, anything else for the good of the cause? All right, seeing nothing, it is 10:10 and we're adjourned. Thank you, everybody.